Alright, one last shot at this before I just fucking give up. This is a video for everyone out there who thinks that it's within their, I guess not within their right, but that they're qualified, somehow entitled to weigh in on someone deciding to exercise their constitutional right to carry a firearm, concealed or otherwise, in accordance with state or federal laws, while going about their daily business, while going to the shopping mall, while going to school, whatever the case may be, going to work in some instances. And who does so without having been someone who has been put in a situation where their workplace, their school, or somewhere that they were visiting was put into lockdown or otherwise impacted by somebody who was unlawfully carrying a firearm at that location. And this is coming from somebody who's been through that scenario more than once. The two times this has happened in my life were once, way on back, more than a decade ago now, when I was in high school, and the second was during my second trip back to post-secondary education at college in my hometown. During the high school event, cell phones were popular, but Twitter wasn't what it is now. Instagram, nope. Snapchat, not a thing. Data plans, basically unheard of for something that a high school student could afford. Our instant connectivity wasn't quite where it is now. And so during that time, when a man showed up outside of our school carrying a rifle, which you're not allowed to do in Canada like that, our school gets put into lockdown. And normally when we had a lockdown drill, it was a drill. We were notified that it would be happening that day. Kind of ineffective, really. And all the students were told, okay, like if you have your phone on you, you don't call anyone, you don't text anyone, you don't answer phone calls. No telecommunications. Right? Always scared there could be a bomb. You know, they don't want a killer knowing that somebody's there, hearing you talking, that sort of thing. So we didn't really have that, instant connection to what's going on, who's doing what, where is this person. It was over relatively quickly. The police apprehended the guy. No big deal. Nobody was shot. Right? We didn't know until after the fact that it wasn't just a really poorly planned drill. Little unsettling when we found out after the fact, but just kind of, move on. No one got shot. The police didn't have to shoot anybody. Life goes on. And then there was my time in college. I was sitting with an old classmate of mine. I'd split off into a new program. He carried on with accounting. And we were just catching up in the tech hall. It's this kind of long offshoot of the college that was, I guess, kind of built up for the tech students. Lots of robotics labs and that sort of thing. And then, over the PA, we hear the announcement that the campus is going into lockdown. No one knows why, but it was, a hide and shelter in place alert that goes out. It's odd. Well, my friend and I, grab people out of the hallways who are looking around like, okay, what the hell do we do? And off down one of these side hallways we go, down this other way in between these two classrooms, and then off into this maintenance room. Right? And all in all, we felt pretty good about it. Just, because, again, when we had a drill, typically announced, and we've been at class all day, so we thought we should have known. So a little unsettling to start. And then the tweets start happening, and texts start coming in and flying around, because everyone's just given up on don't take out your phones and don't call people and don't text anyone. The naivety of high school students gone out the window. and it shows up on the Facebook page that somebody has shown up on campus with a gun. And there are pictures of this person. And people are reporting, like, he's roaming through the hallways, and, no one knows what's going on. And so, of course, the police are called. Takes them what feels like forever to get to the campus, much less to show up, to begin, to get into the buildings and start looking for this guy. And myself and these two guys and this one pregnant girl who's there with us, we're huddled in this little maintenance room, and there's these two doors that come in, these bulkhead doors. They've got that cross-wire braced glass in them, and they're the entrance into this long hallway. And then out the side of the room is a one-way door, emergency exit. And so, all things considered, though we're freaking out about this, you don't go outside because you don't know if he's outside the door, but he can't get in through that way, and you can see down the hallway. But we're just sitting there thinking, okay, great. If this guy comes down this hallway, right, likelihood of it, pretty slim, unless he's looking for somebody in those classrooms, in which case he'll be here. But what do? We have to think amongst ourselves, okay, well, everyone's got a plan until they get hit, but you want to try and think, what's my role in this? What do I do if he comes down this hallway? And unanimously it's, okay, well, we take the girl and we get her the hell out of the emergency exit, and that's it. The rest of us brace that door. And we're thinking, okay, well, yeah, great. We've braced this door. Depending on what he's carrying, a 2-inch thick metal door is probably going to hold. But what if he decides to try and force the door? What if he tries to, shoot through the glass? What do we do? And we have to sit there. Well, just nothing seems to be going on, right? We don't know if the police are sweeping the halls. Finally we hear, okay, well, they're on campus. Are they in the buildings? We don't know. And we spend an eternity wondering if this is just going to be our day. And not a single one of us had anything more than a hammer or screwdriver we could find in this maintenance room to defend ourselves with. And I can tell you that prior to that point in my life, before I'd been put in a position where my livelihood, my very life could be threatened by somebody unlawfully carrying a firearm, I was I'd say I had a very standard Canadian view on firearms. Definitely wasn't pro-gun, but wasn't ridiculously anti-gun either. And after that incident, completely changed my point of view on the concepts of open or concealed carry. I don't think anyone who's not been in a situation where they had reason to believe they legitimately required one can really speak on it with any sort of weight. You haven't been through it. It is a uniquely formative experience to have to consider immediately your own potential mortality and your own inability, your own impotence in a way, your inability to defend yourself. Because if it comes down to it, it's not going to be a fair fight, you versus this person who is wielding God knows what, for God knows what reason. And I see a lot of this all the goddamn time online, right? There's this Twitter post that's just brought this up. Of course it's a Twitter post by a Max Howroot, just at HOWROUTE on Twitter. It says, I just don't get it. She needs this to buy bread, what the fuck? And it shows a woman, I would think by the looks of it posing for this photo in a supermarket, but strapped on her hip is this big, what looks like, wood grain gripped 911, 1911, sorry, on her hip. Blatant open carry, middle of the supermarket, just going about her day. And I think to myself with that, and this, everyone wants to sit there and go, this is ridiculous. Why would you do that? My dad traveled down to the States, visited with some good friends of theirs, him and my stepmother. And I believe it was in Utah. Either they were visiting Utah or the friends they were visiting were from Utah. And had what my dad described as a small armory in their house. Now, that being my dad, this could have been just a couple of guns. But the point is, he had what I thought was the unmitigated gall to ask this gentleman and his wife with whom they were visiting that when they went out, because they're the state they were allowed carrying their firearms, that they not carry with my dad and my stepmother present. And there's something shameful in that to me, that you would ask someone who otherwise you seem to be great friends with, you would trust implicitly, to disarm themselves just because the presence of this chunk of metal makes you feel uncomfortable. The presence of that chunk of metal not only makes them obviously feel more comfortable, it's also their right. And on top of that, if you are caught in a situation where someone might need that particularly configured hunk of metal, you would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. We don't have the same sorts of open or concealed carry laws here in Canada that the US has. And I don't say the US as a monolith. The various concealed and open carry laws that exist, the ones that permit it, we don't have that. The only time that you are lawfully allowed to carry a pistol just out and about, with you while you go, are situations where the police response is expected to be longer than adequate by the government's say-so. So you live quite far out, possibly beyond the coverage of the standard police. And then may need to defend yourself because it could take them hours to get to you. 2, and even then, most folks don't carry. Aside from that, if you work in a situation where you transport, high-value goods, jewelers, armored cars, that sort of thing, you can get a permit to carry, but it only applies when you're on the job. And finally, if you are working in an area working or living in an area where aggressive wildlife can be found. So, for example, guys working out on the oil rigs, way up like Alberta way, and if you work, kind of far northern Manitoba, places like that, where you can run into large bears, to moose, to wolves, to whatever, just on your way to work, and you may need to literally defend your life from these things. Those are the situations in which you can sometimes carry a firearm, concealed or otherwise, and I believe in any of those events it's always open carry, but I could be wrong on that. There are no provisions for Canadians carrying their own firearms, outside of going out hunting. Definitely nothing where you're carrying a pistol. If you're going to a range, you're transporting it locked and all the rest of it. I guess in summary, if you have not had to consider your own mortality at the hands of someone who is unlawfully wielding a firearm in your immediate vicinity, if that's not been something forced upon you, I really don't think that your opinion on whether or not someone should be allowed to carry holds any weight. You can have it, I just don't value it. Because there are just certain things that until you have actually been through them, you don't understand. You could never comprehend. Men cannot understand the pain that a woman goes through during childbirth. Women can't understand exactly what it's like to be kicked in the nuts. There are certain things in this world that require experience to teach the lesson. You can tell somebody about it all you want, but they have to experience it to really get it. Like love, or the feeling of loss that you get when a family member passes. Until you've been through that, you don't really know what it's like. You can think you know, you can read all about it, you can hear how other people describe it. But these are experiences that are truly personal. That are, in a way, unique to each person who experiences them. But in that way, can't be understood completely until you've been through it. Please stop acting like you just know better than these people what's best for them. You don't. You might think that makes me uncomfortable. Tough shit. You being uncomfortable should not stand in the way of somebody exercising their right to self-defense. When you live in a country like the US, where there is obviously a problem with the gun culture, and quite evidently issues with certain communities in the US, and you can look at young men broadly, but young fatherless men living in urban areas and large city centers, you can see that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. And perhaps, just Canadian's opinion here, perhaps that's something you should look into with a little more commitment than you seem to give to ban video games, take down all the adverts, that violent music. Michael Moore is full of a lot of shit these days. But he does bring up a pretty solid point in the movie documentary, Bowling for Columbine. You might want to say that these boys listening to Marilyn Manson and other, dark or aggressive music styles drove them to commit this massacre. But they also went bowling, I believe the morning of the shooting. They bowled a few frames and then went off and massacred their schoolmates. Bowling didn't do it. No one's banning bowling. Maybe, just maybe, we need to take an honest look at what is motivating people to do this. Why people just check out from society. And I say people because over the last couple of years there have been female shooters who've shown up. The YouTube shooter, for example, is a woman. Surprisingly low body count. I think people injured, but no death toll. There was a young girl at a high school, actually a couple of them who had planned. They were arrested for conspiracy to commit this, massacre at their school. They were planning it, got caught, thankfully. Another girl who showed up started shooting. People wounded, no one killed. And people go, well, it's always, young white men killing all these people. It's like, majority of mass shootings aren't by young white men. Tough pill to swallow, because people don't want to look at what happens, what situations seem to create the majority of mass shootings, but yet they're there. Something needs to be done. People who've not experienced having their lives threatened with a firearm need to stop talking like they know what that's about, and need to stop telling people who have been through that, or who just are concerned they may be put through that, from how they're going to defend themselves when it happens. Hopefully, if it happens. And I get it. Yeah, well, they could be concerned and they don't want to have you having a gun around. Sorry. Right to defend myself trumps your right to disarm me. That's it. Lastly, I'd like to make a point that I've seen made on Twitter a few times recently, which is, in this example of the woman carrying her pistol while going grocery shopping, my comment to that, because I thought it was, that it's a particularly salient point, is that it's her body. It's her choice. How, when, and where she chooses to defend her body is none of your business. There's not a single person who has made the my body, my choice, or her body, her choice argument when it comes to being pro-choice regarding abortion, who can turn on this and then say, well, I don't want you to have the choice of how, when, and where you defend your body. It's fine for these people to tell women what to do with their bodies when they don't agree with them politically. I think that's kind of questionable. In any event, this has been one Canadian's very early morning, very tired, very frustrated ramble about the absolute state of the discourse regarding America, firearms, and American gun culture. Hopefully some of you who haven't been in the situation and haven't considered, really considered, what it's like, will take another crack at it. You know, one more kick at the can and see if you can try and put yourself that much closer to being in the mind of someone who is terrified, thinking that with hand tools they've scavenged from a maintenance room, they might have to face down a gunman because that's their best option, rather than run away and be shot in the back. I'm gonna catch some sleep. I gotta work later. Just think a little, folks. Think just a little about what that might be like.